So I have a pair of books I wanted to talk about today that are similar but different. But I just found this pairing to be so interesting. And so the first book is Step Up to the Plate, Maria Singh, and it's by Uma Krishnaswami. And it's about a girl who is half Indian and half Mexican, growing up in, I think it's 1945, Central California. And this one is a more contemporary story. It is Lupe Wong Won't Dance by Donna Barba Higuera. I believe this is her debut middle grade novel. Um, and and Lupe is half Chinese and half Mexican. And so if you look at the two covers, you can see similarities. I mean, they're both half Mexican, half Asian, and they both have kind of baseball, softball. And I thought that right off the bat is kind of amazing, right? Because that's not something you see every day, let alone have two books like that. And so this book, Step Up to the Plate, Maria Singh, is about during this time when her parents were married, it was illegal to have mixed race marriages. Because that didn't really change till Loving versus Virginia. And I forget the year, but it's later. But there was sort of a weird little gray area where people of color could get married in California. And so that's why you had these Indians that came from India to work, and there were, no Indian women to marry, and you had Mexicans that came over to work also from and you had more females. And so this was a gray area where those marriages were allowed. And that's based on a true story. That's based on actually history, what happened. So anyway, so during this time in the story, Maria is in school and they decided to have a softball team for the first time. And Maria's dad is completely against it because, women don't play sports or girls don't play sports. But her mother is for it. And so she joins the softball team, back in the day where, women were, they didn't have uniforms. And it's just a story about how World War II, softball, and sort of this first, ability to play sports and what she had to overcome to do that. So she's half Punjabi and half Mexican. Punjab is a region in India. And I just thought I always just really loved this book. And so when this book came along, which it just came out, Lupe Wong Won't Dance, I was like, oh my God, how incredible. And so Lupe also, half Mexican, half Chinese, set in contemporary times, has like a little bit more layers of conflict. Like she's a baseball player, so not softball, but baseball, plays with boys. And it's just like an incredibly great athlete, like very good at baseball. She has some friendship issues. Her best friend is autistic. I think it's her neighbor who's a boy. And she also has another girl who's a friend. And they have a little bit of conflicts working out their friendship. And as a minor thread running through it, her father died a year ago. Her father, who's Chinese American. And there's really not so much about dealing with sorrow or grief for that, but it's just a little thread that runs through it. And so the major conflict in this book is that for PE now they're going to have mandatory square dancing, and not just square dancing like as a unit, but the best square dancers are going to perform in a big event, and Lupe needs to get an A in all her classes, but especially PE as well, because if she does, then her uncle has set up a meet and greet with another famous half Mexican, half Chinese baseball player that she's always admired, which they're kind of dangling good grades for that introduction. And so there were. I mean, I thought this was a great story, well written, fun to read. I enjoyed all of it. I enjoyed even learning about the square dancing. There's another sort of minor story of her PE teacher who was kind of traumatized by square dancing back in the day when that PE teacher also went to the same middle school and had the same mandatory unit, and it was a difficult experience. But a few of the details weren't quite like for me, from my experience, like didn't weren't the same for me growing up. So for me, PE, or even for my kids now in middle school and high school, like the PE grade is kind of based on participation. So as long as you show up, you get an A. You don't have to actually be like great at square dancing or great at that sport. And so here, maybe it's different, like where she grew up or where her school is at. But yeah, we've always had PE as effort. So that was one minor detail. And then another minor detail is she has conflict with her friend, who's a girl. That her name is Andy, and her friend is like a joiner, just like, sort of like ambitious, like just building her resume. And she joined sort of like late in the game, club soccer, and now she's hanging out with the soccer girls in the middle school who are like the popular soccer girls. And so for me, like that, because my kids played soccer for a long time and they played club soccer, that wasn't completely accurate. Maybe it's true for her experience or for the author's experience, but in my experience, one, club soccer you have to try out in June, and then the season starts like in middle of August actually, and then runs the whole school year. And so it's unusual to join club soccer like in the fall or even later. I mean, you can, but it's, you miss the tryouts. And if you didn't grow up playing soccer, if you haven't been playing soccer or club soccer, for years and years and years, in middle school, you're not going to make the same team as the girls who've played club soccer for years and years and years, because there's different teams, and it's very hard to make the first team. So you're not really going to just walk on and hang out with the girls who've been playing soccer forever, who are skilled, the way Andy did in this book. Like, one, it'd be unusual for you even to join club soccer. I mean, maybe you had a special tryout, but you certainly wouldn't make the first team. So she has that in there. And then, and even if you did make the first team, you don't necessarily have a whole cluster of girls on that first club team in your school, because usually the first team draws from all over geographically, and it's unusual even to have one or two kids in your school on your team, especially at that first team high level, because town teams will be the same, will have the same kids from your town, but not club soccer. So that struck me as unusual. Maybe it's a club soccer team that's just based in her town, but for me, like, I like it when all the details are universally more accurate. And so that's a minor detail, but I was kind of like, if I was a middle school kid and I played any kind of club sport, especially club soccer, and I saw that, I'd just be like, what? No, that's not true. So it didn't completely ring authentically in that respect. But in terms of the characters in the story, especially how she weaves the story with her gym teacher, and it's a very satisfying ending. So I thought this book was great. I really liked it. But just in terms of editing, I wish that they had the details of club soccer and, maybe even the grade, if they found a way to change it so that it's just rang more true for kids in middle school. So anyway, I highly recommend both. And if kids read them together, it's an interesting comparison. So I hope you guys will enjoy these books as well. Thank you so much for watching.